Well, today on the Risk Control Show, we talk about the $27 million settlement and the sad news of a bullying incident that resulted in the death of a child. This happened in Moreno Valley Unified School District,
Yeah.
and it's very sad. And I don't want to go too much into the bullying incident itself, but basically, a child was bullied. It was reported on Thursday prior to the weekend. The following Monday, the kids that were bullying were still on the campus and started to beat the child. The child fell, hit his head. They continued to beat him, and several days later, the child died from a brain injury. And the school district a suit was filed against them. They settled for $27 million, which is a hell of a lot of money. And
Yes.
we're seeing bigger settlements like that are going to be running rampant through California. And what we have to keep in mind is this is a settlement. It didn't go before the jury. So in that case, we probably could have been looking at hundreds of millions of dollars, So when we
Right.
think about it in that respect, it it's a lot of money, and I'm not trying to place any judgment on the financial piece of it and the person's life that was lost. What I think we have to look at from a risk management standpoint is the actions that led to that kind of settlement, what the message is going forward, and what is happening in the state of California as it relates to insurance carriers. And having had conversations and sitting in some invite only type meetings with carriers across the nation and their concerns about California, we got big problems and we got to solve them.
Yeah.
So, Matt, you want to give our viewers a rundown of the actions, our inaction, our gross
Abs-
negligence by this particular principal or vice principal, and
Sure. Sure. And again, like Steve said, this is all tragic, and we're trying to come at this from a risk management perspective. But obviously, a child lost his life in this, and I think that for if you're an administrator in a district or you're a risk manager, this is your worst nightmare. Something happens like this, it's someone that was under your care. And I imagine that the assistant principal who has been and I'm not saying we don't know anything really, we only know what's reported, we don't know anything really from the actual details of it. So I guess I would say allegedly, but my understanding from what was reported is there was bullying going on between these two 14-year-old students of the 13-year-old victim, the bullying victim. And it was reported to the assistant principal or a assistant principal, and that was on the a Thursday in this framework of time. This is on a Thursday of a week, and the assistant principal, for whatever reason, did not take proper steps to notify other administrators or enact a punishment, despite the fact that this person assured the reporting individual that actual actions were going to be taken. Those actions didn't happen. The following Monday, so this is what, 4 days later, Steve, the actual incident in which the 14-year-olds, the same two bullies, came again. I mean, they basically had a physical altercation with the child and the 13-year-old. And as you noted, Steve, unfortunately, he fell poorly during this fight, struck his head, and the beating contributed to him passing away a few days later. And what I think was particularly notable was the assistant principal in question, who may or may not have taken actions necessary to stop this from happening, was actually not on campus that day. She was off, or she was excused absent. She was absent from from the location.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's essentially the story behind it. And on one side of me, I my heart goes out to everybody involved, including the assistant principal. But then on the other side of it, you know, I have a little bit of, I don't know if anger is the word, but yeah, anger is fine. Anger, yeah. That why wasn't something done? When something tragic like this happens, when a a child, a 13-year-old boy who looks like an absolute sweetheart in the pictures posted, when he loses his life, I mean, it's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's yeah,
And we talked about that from the standpoint of um, whether or not, like, sometimes people try to judge the victim. Oh, he was a jerk. He was this. He was
oh
that.
yeah,
It's a 13-year-old boy. No matter how big of a jerk you are, you're at school. You're not in a gang. Not in
mm-hmm.
school. Um, getting beat up. Maybe you have some choice words, or maybe you are a little upset or whatever. It doesn't mete out a punishment of death.
Yeah,
Like there's
right.
no room for that whatsoever. And I kind of want to go through, some of the actions. I think, Matt, I think you've seen me upset and scream and yell and kind
Yeah.
of over some. I know people are saying right now that our viewers are chiming in here. They're like, Steve screams and yells. Yes, I do every once in a while when Matt does something really effing stupid, like jump off a ladder on a roof.
Yeah.
But
You didn't yell at me about that.
no, I didn't.
You had a very, very, very stern response.
Yeah,
Let's just
if
say
our
that.
client wasn't there, I would have screamed and yelled, "What in the F are you doing?" Um, but you may recall, Matt, and I'm gonna put you in the spotlight, but one
Sure.
time we we were out doing a job, and something occurred. We had a little back and forth. I mean, there wasn't any nasty words or whatever, but we had a little back and forth with one of the sites, and the guy was upset because we were trying to deliver something. And I told you, contact the risk manager right away and let them know that we weren't able to get in there, and that the person was upset that we arrived at the end of the school day, even though that was our instruction. And you drove home and totally forgot. And the next that night or the next morning or whatever, we got emails because the other person had reached our point of contact. And I was very upset with you because it wasn't done right away. Right? We didn't stop right there. And we try to practice what we preach. Sometimes things get away. Like, no one was killed in our incident. Um, no one was even yelled at or punched or hurt or anything. And still, this
Right.
lack of notification is a real issue all the way around. Like, you got to stop and do your job right then and there. And we talk about this with um, mandated reporter all the time. And is this part of child abuse? Yeah, we've talked about it. Bullying is part of the child abuse by their peers. And what do we always say? I mean, I know we always have um, this little segment. Like, I don't care if it's 4:59 p.m. on a Friday. You
Yep.
need to stop. If you suspect child molestation, abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, you need to stop right then and there and do your damn job and make the reports.
Right. And that's not just a social or moral obligation. That's the law.
Yeah, that's the law. Get it in. And
Yeah.
so we want to get it in. And as we always tell them, the first report to you is not usually the first offense. right? The first time that the kid's bullied probably happened months ago.
Yes.
And most people don't necessarily follow through and report that. They go home, they tell their parents, I was school, it was fine, you know, Jimmy's being a jerk and blah blah blah. And you know, it's verbal, it's this or that, but there's a little bit of abuse. And then, you know, well, he pushed me. All right, well, next time push him back. No one's
I,
thinking that somebody's gonna hit you so hard that you're gonna lose your balance and hit your head and die. Uh, but when you get these reports, when the parents finally come forth and say, "Hey, our kid's been bullied," it's like drunk driving. They say on average, the person that's arrested for drunk driving's done it 80 times prior. And I know from personal experience when I was a kid, oh yeah, I'm
Mhm.
sure that I probably had a drink and drove,
Mhm.
you know, many
Yep.
times without ever being caught. That's why we have the three C's or three S's in criminology: severity, celerity, and certainty.
Yep.
And the faster, the quicker that you can catch that behavior and then punish that behavior, closer the punishment is to the actual behavior, and the more severe the punishment is within reason, the more likely the behavior stops immediately. That's why, how many times, all of us right here, raise your hand. I mean, answer the question. How many of you speed on a routine basis? I
Yep.
guarantee, I guarantee, I guarantee it, because I drive on the freeway and I see everyone doing 80,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
Don't tell me you're the person in the lane doing 55, because you're not. I mean, maybe there's one or two out there. I do.
There are a few. Like, of course, they technically could be breaking the law too, Steve. Basic speed law, right
Well,
there.
basic speed law is 40 minimum. Come on now. Uh, so if we look at the actions of this vice principal, you know, left on a Thursday, told the parents after the complaint was brought forth that they were that the kids would be expelled, blah blah blah. Well, there's a problem with that, and that is typically when we look at expulsions, those typically have to go to the board.
I think actually it was suspension for
Okay,
them, but yeah.
suspension.
So I'm not sure suspension falls under a lighter guideline with respect to full approval,
Yeah, but there, you
but
know that there's still actions that have to be taken, but the expulsion
of
for
course,
certain has to go through board policy. It has to go before the board and be put there, because there's certain actions that have to take place after that. So
right.
so the longer you wait, the longer it takes. And you know, when's the best time to plant a tree? Right now. The idea here though is that when you look at these suspensions and expulsions, they take too long for behavior that, you know, if caught on camera or meted out, or you have the conversations, we all come to an agreement. But there's got to be some way to handle, like you said, suspensions. You got to change board policy, and maybe we need to have a central location within the district that education can continue, where kids that are suspended are under, you know, direct adult supervision for the whole day, you know,
Right.
at maybe an off-site location, another school site within the district that has special remote capabilities or something like that. But the idea there is, you know, we just saw this when we went out to talk to principal at one of our sites that we're doing some plan updates. Uh, Two schools districts, they're in the same city or have boundaries very close to each other. Um, the Their school was still in session. A parent drove their kids that were off school that day over to the school site so that they could harass these other kids and beat them up. And the principal happened to be outside during this time and told the kids to leave. And the 13-year-old kid punched the principal in the face
Yeah.
and knocked his phone out. And so you're getting, especially from our, you know, national administration, you're getting these brazen attacks. We see it with carjackings and robberies and looting and all these things. There's no penalties for these types of behaviors. But the principal just does what? Nothing for several days, and these kids come back. It doesn't
Yeah.
appear that there was any discussion with the other site administrators to watch these kids or to take that child that was bullied. I know they always say like, okay, we have to mainstream and we can't, penalize this particular individual. Well, protecting the person's life is not a penalty, like there should
Right.
be some discussion. So, and we have policies for notification of dangerous pupils that needs to take place. It appears that maybe that did not take place. I don't know all the specifics of this case. I just know that the attorneys involved are, uh, you know, I know their names from years and years and years of working at a JPA, and I know that they're very thorough and that this type of settlement doesn't come easy. So the point is that there's some real actions here that need to be looked at. And the first is the notification, the second is the protection of the child. And those have to, it has to happen now, right? Like right now. You drop
Yeah.
everything else that is not immediate safety related and you go to it.
Mhm. Exactly. You can't. That's the thing. I think I want to say it feels like maybe they didn't take the bullying as seriously as they should have.
Yeah.
Like I said, oh, like I don't know if maybe there was a little bit of lip service going on there. The parent saying, the assistant principal saying, "Hey, we're gonna do this," but not really taking that seriously. I'll do it if I've got time, and it is just a lack of understanding of the urgency required.
Yeah.
And obviously, you don't. This is an extreme event that resulted, right? Obviously, it's as a percentage, bullying doesn't lead to death. In a very very low, it's a very low percentage. But even, I mean, it's not like it's required for something to be extreme for it to need to be stopped. All bullying has a terrible effect. It can, not only does it lead to depression for the children, they can also lead to suicide. It's been linked to the development of active shooters.
It's been linked to the
So
development even of, mental disorders later in life.
yep,
Because you're so depressed and your brain doesn't develop normally.
yep.
I was looking for, keep going.
Yeah. The point is that you need to understand what the urgency is. And for whatever reason, this assistant principal didn't have that urgency, didn't make the effort to notify other administrators, which is just, considering it's a phone call, it's an email, it's not something that's going to take hours and hours and hours to do. You need to initiate that process. There's really no excuse for not taking that step.
No, there's no excuse for it. Zero.
Yeah.
Um, and I think there's no excuse for not knowing. I mean, I'm going to put this up right now. This is I just typed in Google Redondo Beach school fights. I remember when my daughter was there, she's like, oh yeah, there's like a TikTok channel and here you go, TikTok, Adams Middle School, Redondo Beach fight. There's just like 5 videos right there for you to see. I think we just are at a point where if you're trying to put your head in the sand or you think that this stuff doesn't happen, I talk about this all the time. We hear it all the time. Oh, it doesn't happen here. It's not that big a deal. It's so pervasive.
Right.
It's everywhere, right? The bullying
Yes.
is everywhere. We got national programs on it. We got state programs on it. All of our JPAs are trying to put forth programs for it because on the back end, when you're handling claims, I mean, I used to work at a JPA. You're getting 25 of these things a year. You get one a month, easy, of big claims like this. There's problems and they need to be addressed. And we got to start addressing them in a manner that commands some authority. And I was listening to one of my colleagues during breakfast the other day, and they're like, this school district is going to SoFi Stadium to play a soccer game at 125 grand. And it's like, what? why are we focused on this stuff and we can't even get the little things correct? You know, we got to start addressing this. I was at Krav last night, and our instructor, he comes out and does some training for our school security
Right.
officers and things like this. But you have to lay down the rules for the school and you have to enforce them. That's boundaries. So one of our students came in and didn't have his uniform shirt. Well, that was it. I mean, it was over. We're all doing push-ups for like the whole class, you
Right.
know? And so the punishment is right, like I said, the 3 C's: severity, celerity, and certainty. And we say the C's. I know one's an S. But the point is, right then and there, it's handled. And you think that student's going to come in today without a shirt on?
You better not.
Everybody was on them. And you can't be afraid to do that. You can't be afraid to hurt someone's feelings. There is a difference between harm and hurt. Do you know the difference, Matt?
Hurt is just pain, non-permanent damage, while harm is actual physical damage. Do I have that right?
Well, it could be physical, it could be mental, right? You can hurt someone's
Yeah.
feelings, you can hurt them temporarily, but you're not doing them a disservice. Like maybe you put them in the gym and you start lifting weights. Does your body hurt afterwards? Yeah, but you're actually growing as a person,
Of
right?
course.
And we
Yeah.
have to watch that. We don't want to go extreme, but sometimes you have to hurt people's feelings. Sometimes you have to discipline people. Sometimes you have to take students out of the campus until the situation is resolved. Sometimes you have to tell the parents they're wrong. Sometimes you have to, discipline your own staff, right?
Yeah.
And that means you have to be willing to tell the truth, not your truth, the truth, and
Yeah.
and take these things in. And I'm going to say it right now. If you're a parent, you need to get your children into some form of self defense, martial arts, because a lot of this stuff stems from confidence. And when you stand up to a bully, things stop because they're
Confidence, yeah. Emotional control,
right,
mental toughness, um, the actual training, the discipline. There's so many benefits to doing it.
right,
From a developmental standpoint, even above and beyond the actual fighting skills that are gained or the defensive skills that are gained from attending the class.
right. We see this with the active shooter
Hmm.
when they come in. How do you attack an active shooter? People come into our classes and they don't want to even simulate touching somebody with the fire extinguisher, or
Yeah.
they're that afraid. And I get it. You didn't sign up to be in this situation. It wasn't your intent when you chose a career. I get that. But the reality of our environment has changed. And we
Yes.
we can't be naive. We have to deal with that. And we got to change board policy. We have to do some training. The thing that I disagree with the most on this case are some of the statements that were made by the attorney saying that this settlement will cause the schools to change and take notice and this and that. And the answer to that is no, it won't.
No.
We say, oh, this active shooter event will make change. Active shooter events have been recorded since 1800s, like late
Yeah.
1800s. They've been going on. They continue to go on. Policies get put in place. Changing a policy is not going to necessarily. I mean, I just said we got to change board policy. We have to give options. But if you don't do it, just like our mandated reporter, if you don't follow through on it, that the policy itself isn't what makes the change. You have to follow the policy. So
Yeah.
that's part of it. We do have to do training. We have to hold these people accountable. We got to get more people on the ground, right? We're doing
Yeah.
more and more with less and less and less. I know we have insurance that's paid for, this 27 million, but the reality is that's a lot of money and that could fund a lot of positions. And I would rather fund positions. You put 10 more people on the ground for $2 million. Uh, you know, I would much
Yeah,
rather have that than what we have losing the life of this child. We have no idea what this child was going to bring to the world, and we
yeah,
may have just snuffed it out. That's a real shame. But
yeah,
we have to start with enforcing policies. The children have to be able to stand up to this stuff as well.
yeah.
Um, a lot of times the kids don't want to fight back because they're afraid they're going to get expelled or suspended. And I've often had thoughts and conversations on that particular topic as well. Like if you fight back in self-defense, should you even be punished? And my thought is no, you know.
Right, right.
Uh,
I mean, that's obviously there are limits to it, but from a legal perspective, as adults, violence in service of self defense is allowable.
mhm.
Depending on, of course, the level that you take it. Does the response fit
Right,
the
of
crime?
course.
That was brought against you. But by and large, the thinking in from a legal framework is in self defense, in protection of your home and property, you have a lot more latitude and leeway to do that. You're not going to be punished for protecting yourself.
Right.
I am 100% agree with you, Steve. It should be the same for kids. If they are attacked and they are just fending for themselves, then that shouldn't be something that they would be punished for. They shouldn't fear suspension or expulsion for that.
Right. Yeah, and I know it's like, well, who started it and who did this and who did that? Well, again,
Right.
this goes back to you better have the pulse of your school, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
better have the pulse of your school. You better know exactly what's going on. I mean, that's where it was so impressive that the principal did get punched. So he should know some signs and be ready for that so that he's not hit in the face. But the pulse that he had, he was on top of that ASAP. He knew
Right.
who those kids were and that they didn't go to that school, and he asked them to leave because they weren't supposed to be there, and he knew
Yeah.
that right away. This is a principal, right?
Right.
So you better be out there and about, and you better have your thumb on the pulse of what's going on in school.
Yeah. I guarantee you that principal, if he were in this place of the assistant principal in Moreno Valley, an action would have been taken immediately.
Oh
There
yeah,
there would
without a
there
doubt.
would have been an urgency attached to it. And of course
Right.
I know who you're talking about, and I know that he would.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you have to drop everything and you have to
Yeah.
address the needs that are urgent, and those are urgent needs. And I think Matt, you learned the lesson from that too. Like there
I
is
did.
never a time where you can't pick up the phone, you can't, shoot the email, drive over there if you have to. Like
Yeah.
if it's urgent and they need to know, you better get them notified. And we just keep seeing this over and over and over again. And it's really it's it's a shame. We have WeTip to report things. We have Crime Stoppers. But the reality is it starts on the ground and it builds up to a precipitating event. And you wouldn't know it by looking at me or talking to me now, but I was bullied a lot. I was a skinny high schooler, weighing in at 140 pounds when I graduated high school. My parents weren't very cool. Uh, they were religious people. I went to a public school. They were kind of my dad drank some beers. My mom didn't drink at all. They were just kind of I was kind of a nerdy kid, and um, I had made some enemies. And it, luckily for me, fighting was natural, right?
Right.
For some odd reason, my dad used to wrestle with me all the time and stuff like that. So I naturally had some good fight skills.
Right.
But when I got bullied, I didn't. I mean, I had kids rip me off my bicycle, throw me down on the ground, but I never fought back. Right.
Right.
Try and stuff me in a locker, put my head in the toilet, push me around, threaten to beat me up all the time. Well, when the time finally came, well, guess what? This was the junior, pre-senior summer, and some guys came. We saw them out one night. They came over to beat me up, and they threw a punch, and finally I had enough, and I lost it. I beat the living hell out of him. And from that point forward, guess what? This guy was showing up to my house for parties because he was like, "Oh, I'm your best friend now." What the hell? Like, why are you here? You've hated me for 4 fucking years. You know?
Right.
So
yeah.
Get out. Like what? But whatever. We made up. We became friends, and but the point is, the bullying stopped right then and there. You fight back, and I'm not saying that's the answer every time, but when we look at the MO of a bully, they're picking on people that are weak. You could see it in every movie. What do? They pick on the person that's not going to stand up, that's weak, that's going to hand over what they are, because a lot of times they're reacting out of a lack of confidence to show off and have friends, and they're not really that tough to begin with. Some are, but it's rare. And so I love that old movie, and it's not the it's called My Bodyguard. It's the old movie
that's a
with
good one.
Dylan and all those, but not Dylan. It's not the one about the female singer, but it's
it's the Casey Simasco, the three. Wait, was that it? The 3 o'clock high? No. I know. No. It's a different movie. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's a good movie.
About?
Oh, that one is also about a bully. The 3 o'clock high. Yeah, you should check that out. But no, I know which one you're talking about. My bodyguard
in there, huh? This it? Yeah, this is it. Yeah,
My Bodyguard.
It did have Dylan in there. Yeah, this one right here. If you never watched it, you need to watch it. So this kid's getting picked on all the time. I believe I have.
It's been decades.
Oh, yeah. You know what? That Richard Bradley from Karate Kid's in there too, huh?
No kidding.
Yeah. But anyway, this kid's getting picked on all the time, and the big giant starts to defend him, teaches him how to fight, and guess what? All that stuff stops.
Yep.
It's about confidence. So we have to have confidence building in our schools. We talk about this all the time. Self-esteem, confidence, acceptance, these things, they're all nice and sweet to talk about, but we actually have to put some programs around it and start to build it. So I think, we have on our site, I might as well always have a sales pitch, right, Matt?
Always.
What do you think on the bullying programs? Like, what else would you suggest?
Well, I like the direction that you're talking about, that there's some training that I think really needs to be done at a young age, because that's when they're going to take it in, teaching kids to stand up for themselves, teaching kids about what boundaries are. I mean, too many times we see a lot of adults who have never understood where a boundary was. They allow others to cross that boundary, or they willfully go over others' boundaries.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about whether that's aggressive behavior or might be just behavior that's unwelcome to others, or that others are doing to that person, and not having that confidence to stand up for yourself. And I'm not saying there has to be a fight every time. It doesn't have to be like that, but having the confidence, that self-esteem to say, no, this is not acceptable. This needs to stop right now.
Right.
And establishing that, I think that a lot of times we're having to learn that as adults, and I really think that there needs to be a focus on doing that on the student, the kid level. It doesn't have to be 6 year olds, but I mean, by the time you get to middle school, for sure, you should start to see something like this. And on top of that, the other aspect of bullying is a lot of times you mentioned we tip these anonymous lines. Who is the number one source of reports of bullying, Steve? Like who knows the most about bullying that's going on in a school? It's the students themselves.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I'm not even talking about the bullies or the bullied. I'm talking about everybody around. If
Dude,
somebody is
it's
getting
on
bullied,
TikTok.
everybody knows. Yeah, exactly. It's on TikTok. I think in continuing to encourage that rapport between teachers and administrators and students, and encouraging those conversations to give students because they know it's wrong, and probably most of them don't like it, but they're afraid to do anything. They're
Right.
afraid to say anything. They're afraid to be called snitches or whatever. You need to have that rapport so
You
that
know,
they
that's a
will come
very real
forward and
thing
say that.
that you said right there. That's a very
Mm-hmm.
real thing. And the problem is people dismiss it all the time, right? They
Yeah.
go, snitches, it's a real thing. You see it
Yeah.
all the time. Look at any outlaw motorcycle gang. If you're a rat,
Mm-hmm.
guess what?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
where it starts, right? Don't be a snitch. Don't tell on your
Yep.
friends. Don't do this. Don't do that. And so the one that's not getting bullied is like, do I want to be the target of that type of behavior? Well, the answer is no. So
Right.
you have to give them ways. We've been in business since 2000, like technically since 2000, late 2011, but
Right.
kind of legally certified and LLC put together in early 2012 when we were getting all our paperwork together. And I'm just going through some of our old blog posts, Matt,
Huh?
going all the way back to 2012. Bullying, 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 13, 15, 17, 17, 19. Like we got so much stuff on bullying and programs and policies and all this. We've been talking about it for 11 years. It's
Yep.
not new, folks. Get after it. But you
Yeah.
have to, going back to this whole thing, when you see the violation, you have to handle it now.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be serious and it has to be stern and it's no joking around. And,
Yeah.
we see these things like, oh, the kid used the gotcha type thing. Well,
Right.
Is that bullying? Is that playing around? Gotcha. I don't know the answer to those things. You have to
Yeah.
put it in context, but it needs to be addressed and it needs to be enforced. And if you have a rule that's not enforced, it's not a rule. Just like we say, if you got a boundary and people break the boundary and you don't do anything about it, it's not a boundary. It's a suggestion.
Yep.
Right? So you need to address it right then and there. And you need to be stern about it. And if it happens again, then boom. But a lot of this comes down to also where the kids are playing. Like when we do our facilities inspections, we see all kinds of crazy stuff out there. And we were doing the one with the basketball court. I remember we had a case where the kid ran up for a layup, went behind, couldn't stop in time, hits the cargo container and, and cuts his hand wide open. It's like
Wow.
a lot of times you have to look at the layout of the facility and these things matter, right? We have regulation after regulation on playgrounds. We got all kinds of discussions and classes on sexual ed, and we're talking about transgender and gender identity. Like, how many people are dying from that? How many people are getting harmed from that versus bullying? I mean, and you could even say, you could roll that right into the bullying. If you're getting picked on because of your gender identity or you're transing, then that's a bullying incident too. So
Yep.
what do we have? We have a lot of bullying going on that we need to address. But if you go into the school, what you see are posters. You don't see any formal education around. We need some formal education around.
Yeah, it's a very passive system.
Yeah.
It needs to be more aggressive,
right?
Aggressive from an application perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I love the wrestling and the
Okay.
wrestling programs, because they teach
Yeah.
you confidence.
Yeah.
You know, not too many people, like especially with the girls, not too many people pick on the female wrestlers.
Mhm.
And why? Because they have the confidence, and there's an aura of, oh, if you pick on that person, they're going to destroy you. You know?
Yeah.
So I think there's some of those things that need to be brought back into schools. Part of the problem is the insurance companies too. You know, they want to take these things out because people get hurt and this and that, and you know, it's there's a lot to it. So
yeah, I mean, insurance companies, of course, their focus, of course, is on the bottom line, and it's not about making sure the kids are safer or developing proper
it is
skills,
about making sure that kids are safer,
right?
But you know, I think, as you said, it's not necessarily always about the development of the child, as it is how do you prevent the behavior without, you know, causing additional risk. And sometimes, as I've always said, and it was a tagline of ours for a long time, was, you know, when you're in a school working with knives, learning to weld, learning these hazardous things, working with chemicals, there's got to be a place to go learn this stuff. Where is it? A school. And so we need to have boxing programs in our school. We need to have wrestling programs in our school. We need to have karate in our schools, right? We need to have these things. And even, you know, maybe we even have self-defense as a gym class for, you know, once a month or whatever it is, so that we can learn these things. And I think when you do that, then there's avenues and methodologies to put in place to make sure that that's based in discipline.
Yep, exactly. And honestly, it's also about giving students tools that they can utilize. You know, the fact of the matter is that a lot of the times when, like, take bullying again, for instance, is, you know, the bullied doesn't have control over this, can't change the behavior of the other kids, and lacks the knowledge or ability to deal with it, and it's out of their control. If you have something that is completely out of your control, Steve, you know, you don't feel confident about it because there's nothing you can do about it. Well, if you provide them with self-defense classes, then you give them tools and knowledge that allows them to control an interaction,
right?
And
Absolutely.
to have that confidence. You know,
use your voice, walk away, how to call for help. All those things are important.
Yes.
So again, the school gets big damage. And what I want every parent to understand is, even though they have insurance, insurance is paid for by the school district. And when they got big losses like this, their share going to a pool goes up. And all that money comes from taxpayers' dollars. So we need to put pressure where the pressure belongs. The school, and when I read that article, I did not like the fact that so much onus is put on the school. I get that the school needs to do those things, but really the onus is on the kids that are bullying and the parents that allow their kids to bully and strike and hit and do these things. That's the reason that the kid was murdered. And it's not that the principal didn't do something. Like, yes, it's important and they should have done something. But the real reason is that these kids decided to be jerks,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we got to stop taking this away from the perpetrator. We see it with the carjackings. We see it with, oh, everybody's like the fire alarm now has, you know, victimized
Mhm.
Jamal Bowman.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
no, 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 no,
It's
no,
not
no.
it's not how that yeah.
Yeah.
It's not how that works.
The reason that
I
this,
yeah.
go ahead, Matt. Yeah.
Well, we just see this that the this is the victim card.
Right.
It's been it's become the go-to card for just about everybody who feels like they don't want to take accountability for doing something.
Right.
It's like, oh, I'm going to find a way to remove responsibility for what I've done by putting the reasons for it on someone or something else. And that's the whole purpose of playing the victim card. And yeah, it just it's sad. It's another of those little things that we see going on and kind of growing in society. And I mean, it goes against our teaching and our training too, right? I mean, fault versus responsibility.
Yeah, fault
You
versus
know,
responsibility. It
yeah,
may not be your
yeah,
fault, but it is your responsibility. And again,
yeah,
I'm not discounting the principal's actions here or lack of action
mm,
or vice principal. They need to take responsibility for it and report it and do those things. But the reality
yeah,
is, hey, people do things that they shouldn't do and
yes,
results in these things. And bottom line is, shouldn't do it. Just shouldn't
yeah,
do it. You know, it's like this YouTube prankster that got shot. The judge made the right decision there. YouTube prankster
mm,
was in the mall harassing this guy, and the guy finally pulled out a gun and shot him in the chest. And the YouTube prankster survived, but the judge said not going to, no fault, self defense, good to go. Is that
yeah,
is that the right decision? In my opinion, yeah. Because at what point is it the responsibility of this idiot prankster who's gone too far? You know, and
right,
you're harassing somebody sexually, and it's like not cool at
yeah,
all. And so, yeah, does that deserve to be shot? No, but at the same time, like, maybe you should leave people alone when they ask you to leave them alone. You know?
right, 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 exactly. And I think that people are much more willing to go to violence now than they used to as well, which is another reason why you should always be careful about how you go around things and overreacting and getting angry yourself, because you don't know if you're facing someone who's been to Krav classes like Steve has, or has taken extensive martial arts training, or maybe he has a weapon on him.
Right.
I say him, it could be her as well. You don't know. And there's no, that's a consequence that's going to go way above and beyond whatever little argument or hurt feelings led to that whole situation.
Right.
You
Exactly.
know?
Yeah. Be nice. Buy your fellow man a beer
Yep.
and be nice. We
Yep.
have the ABC, always be cool, and we have DBAD, don't be a
Yeah.
do those things and you can get along pretty well in life. So I think,
Yeah.
I think for someone that has been bullied that then gets that confidence, like, yeah, I still walk away from things, I can laugh a lot
Yeah.
of things off, but you put hands on me, it's going to be a different situation. So,
Right.
like you said, you'd never know who you're dealing with. And I think it's just high time we bring back some respect and some common courtesy and gentlemanly behaviors,
Yeah.
all the way around. Well, with that, we
Yeah.
got a lot of bullying programs. Don't forget to check all of our stuff out. Udemy, Dollar Training Club. We got the blog. I showed you a little bit of the blog post. Our new clients, if you're a new client and you want 20% off, Now's the time. So with that, we'll see you on the next episode of the Bullshit.